nations for my king, I'm a go-go. Be a light, get them saved with the Lord. I'm a go-go, yeah, go-go-go. For the Lord, yeah, Lord. To the nations for my king, I'm a go-go. Be a light, get them saved with the Lord. I'm a go-go, yeah, go-go-go. For the Lord, yeah, Lord. For Jesus Christ, I'ma be the light. Cause the Jesus Christ, I'ma be the light. Spreading the truth and God, they gon' delight. To the nations and US, we gon' make it shine. That's global, that's global. Spread the truth of Jesus Christ, let's so. You know, no, yeah, you know, no. We ain't gon' stop, for God will die, no joke, ain't no lie, that is such an honor. And for Jesus Christ, we will travel anywhere. Give up our lives of comfort for the mission. There. Yeah. I believe in Jesus. He can't be defeated. Let's go out to the nations. Yeah. Fulfill the Great Commission. To the nations for my King, I'm a go. Be a light, get them saved with the Lord. I'm a go, yeah, go. For the Lord, yeah, Lord.
Yes! That was our mission trip in a nutshell, guys. We were in South Texas. We were 10 minutes away from the Mexican border. So one of those pictures that had that big, giant, black wrought iron fence, that was where the border was. We got to go see. You know what I wanted to say, too? That last song, if you didn't know, was by Mr. Ray's daughter, Megan, our worship drummer. I think it's awesome that, like, Megan is not here, but she is, like, the most consistently mentioned person outside of student ministries on Wednesday night. So Megan, if you're watching on YouTube, that's for you. We're going to have a panel. So what I want to do is, if you haven't been on a mission trip or you weren't on this one, we want to talk about what God did. Because we didn't just go to have fun. Obviously we did. Y'all saw that. Water guns and all kinds of crazy. And we went during the 4th of July week, so that's why we had fireworks going on. But there's a lot of stuff that we did that we didn't get to capture in these photos or in the video. And we want to talk about that because that's the whole point of why we went. Hopefully this will stir your hearts for when I share what our next mission trip is going to be at the end. And that trip will be in 2024, so there's lots of time to fundraise for it. But without further ado, I'm going to invite the panel up, and after they're all up, then we'll give them a nice round of applause to get started. So let me share with you our team. It's comprised of student leaders as well as students, and we did have some parents. Mr. Jerry was on the trip, Miss Sydney was on the trip, but they're not necessarily going to be up here, so it's just students and student leaders. All right, tonight, and former students as well, we have Miss Elizabeth Yates. Come on down. Have a seat wherever. We had Mr. Ray Tossi. We had Miss Raya Smith. We had Mr. Jordan Largaspada. We had Miss Emily Deloche. We had Miss Marcia Pletcher. We had Kylie Pettit, also known as Kyle Piet. Come on down. If you were here last year, you know. All right, we had Ryan Manor, Mr. Manor, come on down. Miss Madison White, come on down. Mr. Russell White. And last but not least, Mr. Joe Glubna. This was a representative panel of our mission trip. It wasn't everyone, but it's a good chunk of who went. All right, so tonight how this is going to work is I'm going to be asking a series of questions at different people. They'll get a chance to answer. After they answer, if anyone else wants to answer that question, you are welcome to. Just kind of wave and get the mic and you can go for it because it's meant to be like a conversation. At the end, I'm going to open it up to you guys to ask questions because you may have them. If you have a notebook with you, jot those questions down so you don't forget. And hopefully you'll hear some things that might stir your hearts on how to pray for the future mission trip, so you can always jot that stuff down too. I'm going to move to this side just because I feel like most of y'all are over here, and it's going to be easier for me to look this way. All right, guys, we're going to start off with Kylie. Kylie, you are up. All right, I'm asking you, what made you the most nervous about this trip, and how did you overcome any fears? So hold the button. I'm sorry, guys. Hold the button down, and then it'll just come on. There we go. Testing.
Hello. Hi. Okay. Hi. So wait, what was the question?
Question
again?
is, what were you the most nervous about for the trip, and how did you overcome any fears?
So I think just doing things right, and like you want everything to go smoothly, and I think really the only way I overcome that was by putting my trust in the Lord and being able to let the Holy Spirit guide me in my group or wherever, whoever I was with.
And actually, this is a good question to start with for everybody. Whose first missions trip was this? If it was your first mission trip, raise your hand. Emily, Marcia, Ryan, Madison. Awesome. All right. First mission trips, this is a big deal. Was anybody else feeling a little bit nervous for any reason? And Raya, why were you feeling nervous?
I think the same reason as Kylie, but I think it's also the reason that most people are nervous. Like, oh my gosh, what am I going to eat? Where am I going to be? I'm going to be in a neighborhood full of people that I don't know. What happens if somebody creepy comes up to me? So the normal reasons that you would be nervous for a missions trip, but what I realized soon into it is that those things such as sleeping or eating and all that kind of stuff, first of all, is more fun when you're with a group of people. Like, it's kind of stuff that you, like, laugh about. But also that the Lord has it under control. And that if you're nervous for any reason to go on a trip because of, like, things such as simple as that you shouldn't, because God's got it, and you're with people that you can laugh about it with. So, yeah.
And actually, that leads to my question for you, Raya. What was the main excuse that you wrestled with when deciding whether to go on this trip?
Oh, my goodness, I'm trying to think. Fundraising. I feel like, because when fundraising for this back in 2019, I was just coming out of the Cuba trip, and I was like, oh my gosh, there's so many other people going on this trip. They're probably going to give all their funds to this person, so-and-so, this and that, and I was like, I'm probably not going to be able to raise the money. I'm just going to have to pay for it myself. And so my biggest excuse was fundraising, because I was like, man, is God really going to provide for me to go on this, that, and the other? But he pulled through, and I didn't have to pay anything personally, and it was both a mixture of, like, asking people for support by doing things for them and just people being generous.
And actually, so that was at the very beginning of going on the trip, but remember, right before the trip, there was another monkey wrench that you're going, what was that?
So my sister was supposed to have a baby 7 days before, or 7 days after we got back from the trip. And everyone I talked to was like, oh, it's such a high chance that she's going to have the kid while you're gone. And I was like, huh? And so it was extremely nerve-wracking because that was my first nephew. And I was like, I'm going to miss this huge life event. So I was really scared. I was texting Anna. I was asking my parents. I was like, I don't know if I can do this. I don't know this or that. But eventually I just came to the conclusion. I was like, all right, God, you called me to this trip in the first place. And whatever happens, you're going to be providential for. So if she does have the baby and I'm not there, all right, I have the rest of a lifetime. So yeah, I was a little scared at first, but God ultimately gave me a piece of, if I'll bring you to it, I'll bring you through it. So yeah.
And Benjamin was born after the
And
trip,
he's
so
born,
it all
yes,
worked
He
out.
was 3 days late, which I guess is a good thing.
Anyone else on the panel, did you feel like there was a point, whether it was at the beginning and you were choosing to do the trip or somewhere in the middle, that you felt like there was an excuse that was pushing you back from going? And anyone else struggle with that in any way? All right, that's good. Just wanted to open that up. All right, so this one's for Emily. Emily, how did your parents feel about you going on a mission trip? Because this was your first trip. You never flew on a plane. This was your first plane ride. Like, how did your parents feel? Were they supportive? Did they make you feel discouraged in any way? And how did they respond after the trip?
Well, for me, it was so long ago, but they were really nervous. Like, it was like a first plane ride where it was like, I've never flown on a plane, and they were like, we want to experience that with you. But I think another thing was, like, they didn't know what a mission trip was like because they have never been on one. So they were very nervous. They didn't know what it was going to be like because originally it was Guatemala, so they were like, whoa, it's out of the country. But then it was Texas, and it was a little bit different. But as I, grew up a little bit and I wasn't in high school anymore, I think they were a lot more comfortable with it. So that was nice. But they were still a bit nervous.
Okay, so we're going to ask fundraising questions. So, Mr. Jordan, how did you fundraise, and was it hard for you What tactics did you end up using? Tell us about that.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so fundraising was really hard for me, especially at the beginning, mostly because of my own mental battle that I was going through. It was hard for me to grasp the concept that I wasn't like asking people for money for myself. And so really it was just me working really hard to try to make the funds for my by myself until like 2 really generous donations came to me from mystery people. I actually don't know who the first one came from, but yeah, it was really crazy. So, man, I guess it was really kind of it was pretty soon after, or like pretty close to the time that I was supposed to leave. So, yeah, it was just trusting that the Lord would provide for me, and that it wasn't really for me, it was for Him. So
That's right. Jordan had those big donations come in at the very last minute. I mean, it was like a week of the trip. So he's thinking like, I don't have the money. I'm not going to be able to go. But God pulled through, and God stirred hearts, and Jordan got to go. And so that's something to be very aware of, guys, is that if you're called to do a mission trip, God doesn't forget you. God is not going to leave you high and dry. He is going to provide. Anyone else want to share about their fundraising experience? If it was tough for you, if you got discouraged, what did you do to raise funds? I know for some of you it was a while ago, but anyone want to share?
I kind of want to share a little bit. So like I said, it was a while ago, but I was really nervous to like ask people for money. I was like, why am I going to ask people for money? Like, I want to go on this trip. But I think after the trip, I realized like, wow, the Lord like used me, and there are people out there that are too, like, they might be afraid, or they have children, they can't go on this trip. And they're more than willing to like provide money for you to be able to go and spread the gospel, because they want to go out there, but they're just not able in the situation that they're in. So like most people are like, yes, I would love to. But another thing was, most of my fundraising was me like helping my neighbors plant things, babysitting, helping clean the church here and there. Like, there were many opportunities. And even though it was like $20, $30, I was like, okay, put it in the bank, like put it in the savings. And like, before you knew it, I was like, oh my gosh, I only have like $300 left that I have to like fundraise for. So God really showed me that even the smallest amount, like $30 of 2 hours of work, like really paid off. And the Lord was like, I showed up for you, and you were going to go on this trip. So it's crazy, but He really works in mighty ways.
And if I remember correctly, correct me if I'm wrong, did not one of those fundraising opportunities turn into a job? I thought you did a bounce house, and it turned into a job.
Yeah, I worked, like, the paychecks were like $200, maybe $300, and I put all of it right into, like, the trip. And I was like, yeah, so that was really awesome. I worked there like 3 or 4 times, but it was so worth it, and it really did help me. So, yeah.
I'd like to hear from some of the students. So Ryan, Madison, Kylie, and Marcia, this was a while ago for y'all, but share how you raised funds. What were some of the things y'all did? Kylie, if you want to share first. Ryan, you could go next and share the mics.
Is it on? Okay. So I knew how to sew, so I would make all the Waterstone moms, like bags for the winter. I would sell those. And then I also sent out like letters to like my family members, saying I'm going on a missions trip. Would you like help me like provide for the trip? So yeah, that was a couple of the ways that I.
And I actually have one of your bags, and it's awesome. Yeah. So, Marcia, what did you do to fundraise?
I don't really think I did anything. I literally didn't, I don't even think. Like, we just had a bunch of, like, donations, and then we kind of paid sometimes, but it was kind of just God working, because we had, like, people, like, our family members, like, pay almost the rest of it. So we had, like, I didn't really, like, do fundraising or anything. We just kind of, like, had donators, like, and it was just, like, done. I don't know. It was all God.
But that's good. You and your mom, because her mom came on the trip, prayed and asked God, send people that will support us. And your family members just all, like, they knew you were going and they all stepped in. And before you know it, your trips were paid. So it was pretty awesome. Ryan, how was your experience with fundraising? I remember you had a bubblegum thing. Talk about that.
Yes, at the very beginning of my fundraising, I thought that I would buy gum, sell it, and gain profit, but I realized that I was making very little profit from that. After a couple weeks, I had roughly $7 in the bank. So I resorted to other strategies. I went to asking for donations, and my grandpa lives with some people that are really strong in their faith, and they really thought that what I was doing was the right thing and that I should really go and spread the word. They donated a very generous amount, a large portion to my funding, and that's really what kickstarted me to get it done.
That's awesome. And Madison, share a little bit about how you raised some funds.
Well, I had donations, and I just realized actually when you were talking to Emily that I would not have a job if it weren't for the trip. Because I started my pet business when you said that you had a friend that needed something like me, and if she did not say that she needed me, I would not have a job right now. So that's
Right. So
really,
2019 is when we first started to fundraise, because this trip's been postponed twice because of the pandemic. So this team hung in there and was dedicated. And when Madison started to fundraise, how old were you, Madison? Like 16 at the time?
I guess.
Yeah. And she didn't have a job, but she loves animals. Everybody that knows Madison knows and she'll share about that later on the trip, because the Lord knows what your gifts are. He knows what you're good at and what you like. And when he sends you on mission, you will be pleasantly surprised to see how even things like loving animals, which we'll talk about, works in your favor on a mission trip. So anyway, one of my friends was saying, hey, Anna, you work with students. Do you know a student that's good with animals that can watch my dogs? Because I work all the time. I'm not always to be home to let them out. I said, yeah, let me ask Madison. So FYI, I may come to you at some point and say, hey, one of my friends needs you to help with this. Would you like to do it? And I may hook you up with a job. But anyway, long story short, Madison has agreed to do it. And she said, Miss Anna, this is a great way to earn funds for the mission trip, because it was a regular gig. So she was putting the money aside for the trip, but she was so good at that job that my friend told another friend of mine who hired Madison. And before you know it, she now has a thriving pet sitting business and with multiple clients. I mean, now she's got the car to drive everywhere, so her mom doesn't have to drive her. But look how God used that. Is that not cool? So cool. Okay, we're going to move on, and I'm coming back to Kylie. Kylie, some of y'all are clustered in the front, and then you get a long break, and then the rest of you are going to be at the end. But Kylie, what in particular was the biggest challenge that you faced throughout the overall mission trip?
It was probably like getting started, because I've been on a missions trip before, but it was nothing like this one. And like sharing the gospel, like knocking on people's doors, is very scary. So I think that like my I'm sorry, I blanked. I forgot what I was saying.
What was challenging about doing that for you personally? Like, because, some people may not find that challenging, but what was challenging for you?
Yeah, so the challenge was probably like getting started. Like the beginning of the week was like nerve-wracking for me. I mean, the whole week was nerve-wracking, but it was challenging to get started and knowing, because you practice before, but it's very different when you actually go up to the person. And so, and like all these thoughts are running in your mind, so you're like, I don't know if she's taking it well or are they taking it well. So I think that was the biggest challenge for me, getting started.
Jordan would like to answer that as well. Go ahead, Jordan.
Hello. Yes. Okay. So, yeah, I was actually also in Kylie's group. So we were working together with Sarah and our translator. And part of what made our kind of starting off so difficult was kind of the lack of communication with the translator. So once we got that down, it really went a lot smoother for all of us, and then we could all really work on kind of where the Lord was leading us through that, you know.
And just to clarify for you guys, you saw in the video there was like some church services where there were like girls dancing with like ribbons and people clapping and we were very close to Mexico. So we were at a Mexican church plant. This was a family that came up from Mexico, planted and started a church, mostly all Spanish-speaking members. It was very small. And we were going around the neighborhoods, knocking on doors to share the gospel, to pray with people, to invite them to accept Christ if they didn't know him, and to invite them to church because it was so close to them. And so that's what we were doing, and that's why we had translators, because most of the people did not speak English or speak it fluently. So it helped to have that. So anyone else want to answer that question? What was the most challenging thing for you overall on the mission trip?
Okay, guys, let me tell you. The first day, I was like, I love talking to people. I got this. Like, just talk to people. Like, no problem. And Jerry was next to me, and Jerry just looked like he was freaking out or nervous about something. And I was like, Jerry, what's wrong? And he's like, man, I'm just kind of nervous. And I was like, oh. I didn't really know what to say, but I was like, should I be nervous for this? Like, I'm like, I think I got this, right? And we walk up to our first house, and my mind is like, please, somebody else go first. Like, please. And Anna's like, well, I'll be the first one. And long story short, like, I still just was like, what do I say? Like, I don't know how to talk to these people. So maybe that was my ego kind of stepping in. But it was really like after the third day, I was like, okay, let's go. Like, we got this. We're going to, like, talk to people. And, yeah, I don't know why I felt like I need to say that. But, like, sometimes you just really have to, like, lean on God. And that whole trip, I was trying to do it on my own. I was like, okay, God, you've given this to me, right? Instead of being like, no, I need you. I need your words to speak through me. And maybe that's why I was like, I got this. I know how to talk to people. But yeah, it's crazy.
Anybody else want to answer that? All right, I'm going to ask Mr. Russ a question. So, Mr. Russ, in your experience, what was the Rio Grande Valley region and its people like?
Unexpected. You don't realize what a culture is until you step out of your culture into somebody else's, and you see how others live, how others talk, how others interact with each other, how they live, and how they live, and still they are not expectant of a whole lot more than what they have. I think my heart just went out to the people there that, I mean, really more towards me, that I didn't really understand how much I have compared to other people, which isn't much, but still, it's a lot more than what they have. But the people there were friendly. They were inviting. A lot of the groups actually were invited into people's homes. They served them sodas or tea or whatever. They were not keep to myself type people. Does that kind of explain?
Absolutely, that was great. Does anyone else want to answer that? What was your impression of the region, the area, and the people there that we got to meet? Anyone have thoughts?
I would say it's kind of like culture shock because, well, obviously there's some more low, like, it's less, like, it's low poverty or never mind. It's not as, like you go and you drive into Longwood and you just see a bunch of houses and maybe there's, like, a bad house in there. No, there's, like, some houses that, like, are literally, like shacks, but they, like, start building their own houses, and the thing is that that's theirs. We own houses, but we still, like, make payments on them and stuff, but they actually own their stuff, and they're so proud of that, but you're like, really, you just have, like, this cement, like, wall right now? Like, are you, like, seriously that excited about something while you're living in this condition? So it's kind of just, like, wow, like, we have, like, so much, but really they have, like, a lot more than us, especially when they're so giving, because not even like just the church itself was so giving, and we like from seeing like what the church was, it's not like lights or whatever, or like a bunch of like technology and stuff like that. It's like a speaker and it's just a little wood stage, but it was still like I still saw the Lord moving in that situation, and that was like so like wow, like you can move, like God can move in anything. And so I think that was like the most fun, was to actually like see God move and like worship and stuff in that condition. So I can actually say like not just be like sitting in like our church and like worshiping like this, but actually like doing it like somewhere else.
And to give you guys some context and perspective, so yes, we're in the United States. We're still in Texas. We haven't crossed the border. But this church building didn't have electricity. They had no air conditioning. They had like windows, large windows that the sunlight was coming in. And in the bathrooms, they had these little stick-em, like you stick them on the wall and you push a little button in, and it's like a little battery-operated light that comes on for 15 seconds. And you had to keep hitting it so you didn't get trapped, or y'all know, in the dark in the bathroom. They had like fans going. I guess they did have electricity, but they were very conservative with it. And it was an unpainted wood like platform with like one little pulpit and like one or two microphones, maybe. Yeah, because I think Elizabeth and Sarah shared, and then Ariah had one because we led worship, and that was their church. And I mean, it wasn't flashy, it wasn't fancy, but it was where they gathered to hear the word of God, and that was enough. So it was very cool. Ray, did you want to share anything? Okay, it was a generator. So anybody else want to share their impressions on the Brian?
I do want to add on. I want to add on to what they were saying about how low class it was out there, because like this second house we went to, there was some foundation, but the outside of the house, where usually here you see drywall, you see cement bricks, this was plywood. Yeah. And for those of you that don't know what that is or might not, it is very, very cheap, thin wood. And I assume that house doesn't do well in weather. That was one of the many cases. And the church that we're mentioning, like, we're not talking about some like big or semi-big. This was no bigger than your living room and kitchen combined. It was a very small area. And it was just, everything was scarce, but it was still there. And people were happy with what they had. One of the last houses we went to on the last day, there was a kid playing out in front, and those Rubbermaid bins that you maybe have, they're about yay big. There was semi-dirty water in there, and there was a kid playing in it like it was a pool. And like he barely fit in the tub. And you know, we might take for granted going to the Walmart and buying $20, $30 worth of a little kiddie pool. They can't do that. They go, oh, there's a tub, we can fill it with water and you can play in that. And it's really sad to see some of the stuff out there. And that same house, the pastor was with a group before us, and they actually helped build half of that lady's house. It was really cool. Some of the stories out there are magnificent.
And I will attest to that, guys, that they didn't have a whole lot, but they were joyful because they had Jesus. A lot of them did. Especially in the church, these girls did worship dancing, and they had ribbons and banners and stuff that they would twirl all around, as if you guys probably see it like color guard at your school, you know. But they were just so filled with joy, even though they didn't have a whole lot, and it just spoke volumes. So I'm going to move on to the next question, and I'm fielding this to Raya. But Raya, I want you to be brutally honest, okay? Now, I slept in the bunk next to Raya, and I'm going to share my version of the story after Raya shares her version of the story. But Raya, tell us about where we slept, where we stayed, what it was like, and what were the struggles and challenges about our sleeping arrangements.
It was cozy. It was all 12 of us and some bugs. And, you know, we loved it. Shut your mouth. And so we had some bunk beds, and there was all of us on a bunk bed that we like fist fought for. And we had a couple snorers, but you know, that's fine. Sleep talkers, sleep singers, sleep laughers. That's Kylie, that's Emily, just to name drop. So if anybody has any irregular sleeping patterns, you know, because they're within 5 feet of you. And the mattresses are about this thin, you know, and we're on these little wooden bunk beds. All of our stuff is crammed everywhere. So speaking of Anna, one of these nights I'm asleep, and I notice my phone is unplugged, so I'm like, all right, I'll roll over and I'll plug it in. I go over on the floor. I'm looking for something. I look up, and there is a cockroach like this big, just moseying its way across my bed up to my pillow. Anna is literally 1 inch behind my head. And I was like, I'm really about to wake the youth director up on a dang missions trip. So I'm looking at this cockroach. It's the middle of the night. Everyone's sleeping. I didn't have a flashlight. I didn't have nothing. So I'm like, I'm going to pull out my shoe. I pull out my shoe, and I go to kill it. And I was like, I got it. I look under my shoe. No bug on the bed either. It's just straight up gone. It's 12 in the morning. Anna has her sleep mask on behind me. I feel like she's sleeping soundly, and I'm like, okay, word. So I put in my earplugs, and I go back to sleep. If a bug crawls in my hair, it crawls in my hair. What the heck is a cockroach going to do to me? If it was a spider, I'd leave, but, you know, like, whatever. So I woke up the next morning and told my story, and everyone was like, I would have screamed if I were you. But we found it the next day on the floor, and we killed it, and I was told to hang it up on a string to let all the would-be criminals know what we do to punks in this town. So that punk got locked away for terrorizing my sleep because it was big. But anyways, it was cozy. You really got to know the people around you with communal showers, bathroom stalls that are like 2 feet of doors. I think it's perfect. I think it's the best thing ever. Choose your bunkmate wisely. So yeah,
a story about choose your bunkmate wisely, but I'm gonna let Ryan. Did you want to say something?
Yes, to add on to the cockroach story, I'm getting everybody's out or whatever, and I just remember I was like one of the few people in the boys' room, which is right across from the girls' room, and I just hear somebody going, and I knock, the girls' door is open, and I go into the middle room, and I just hear Raya yelling like, "You don't come into these parts of town," and.
I tell you what, we didn't see another bug that whole trip, period. I know they all went to the boys' musty old room. So, anyways, it was really fun.
All right, I'm coming up here because I'm going to be speaking about different people for a second.
Uh-oh.
All right, so let me tell you about my sleeping experience, okay? Okay. Night 1, Kylie. Love Kylie. She's my bunkmate. She's on top, right? Except what I learned about Miss Kylie, she can't get comfortable in a bed. Now, granted, these were not comfortable beds, okay? No. She's tossing, she's turning, she's moving, and every time she does, the bed is shaking. So I'm on the bottom, like, all over the place, and I'm like, oh. So as nice as I could, I was like, the next day, I was like, hey, Kylie, there's an empty bunk over there.
Next to me.
Do you mind? And she was like, no. I was like, thank you. You are so awesome. But yeah, choose your bunk mate wisely. You were good after that. However, the next night, I'm a very light sleeper, guys. Very light. And all of a sudden, in the middle of the night, Kylie on the top bunk jumps out of her sleep. She literally springs up and sits in the bed. And she's like, da-da-da-da, she starts talking out loud. And I'm wide awake because I'm like, what's happening? And she's asleep because she's not making sense. I'm like, she is rambling stuff that makes no sense. Like, she's asleep. And just as fast as she jumped up and spewed out whatever she said, she just fell right back to bed, just like knocked out, narcoleptic style. I'm like, okay. Next night, Miss Emily wakes up. And she goes, we're in the shopping mall. And then she goes to bed. But then an hour later, she wakes up again, and she's like, math is hard. And then she goes back to bed. And I'm like, I need to write this down. Math is hard. Yes, it is. And we are in what kind of shopping mall? Because I don't see anything fun to buy in this room. So that was day 2. Day 3. What was day 3? Who was it in day 3?
Somebody was singing.
Yes, no, this was awesome. We had a woman named Kimberly. I'm pretty sure it was Kimberly. Kimberly was with East West Ministries, right? She was like an intern. And she was in our room, in our bunk. And in the middle of the night, this always happens in the middle of the night, she wakes up. Now, I don't know if she sat up. She may have been still laying. But she burst into worship singing, like sang a chorus from a worship song, and then just went right back to bed. And she had a beautiful voice, and it was like an angel in the middle of the night that just sung. And I was like, wow, that blessed me. So that happened. And then last but not least, I'm going to tell the Raya rendition. So I'm sleeping because I'm tired. This was like middle of the week. And Raya's right next to me. We're like so close. The beds are so close. You ever eat at like a cheesecake factory? And you know how like the tables are like right there? That was our beds, okay? So we're sleeping. And I'm turned away from Raya. And like this was God protecting me because I'm the biggest baby about bugs. Y'all, an ant this big and I'm like screaming and freaking out. And so this was God protecting me because I hear Raya freaking out. She's like, like muffled freaking out, like, and she's trying to like keep quiet, but she's literally screaming as she's suppressing her vocal cords at the same time. And in my head, I'm like, I'm the youth director. I should probably wake up and deal with something. Something doesn't sound right. But then there's also this part of me that's like, I know that's Raya, and she's like got it under control. It's Raya, like it's good. And also, honestly, I was so tired, guys. Like I couldn't stay awake. So I was like, if it's really bad, someone will come shake me and wake me and get me up. So the next day, I was like, Raya, what was happening last night? Were you okay? Were you dreaming? I heard you like freaking out, but not freaking out. And she looks at me. She's like, well, there was a situation. And I'm like, what was the situation? And Emily's like, there was a cockroach this big that was crawling on her bed. And I go, well, did you kill it? And Raya's like, we tried. I'm like, so it's alive? Yeah. Where is it? We don't know. Now the whole room of girls, there's 12 girls, almost all of us is freaking out. That's when Ryan heard the commotion because we're like, where is it? But we did find him. Once he was killed, we called pest control, and they came and took all our suitcases out and sprayed everything, and we did not have any more problems, but we found a lot of dead bugs after that. In the shower. So, yes, in the shower. So that was my experience in the girls' bunk. I did hear about snoring in the men's bunk, too. There was snoring in our bunk as well. So, yes, you get to know people really, really well on the mission trip because you're in tight quarters.
You get to know people well when you sleep next to them.
Okay, so we're going to move on to the next question.
Oh, hold on. I have a story about sleepwalking, I guess, as well. So, Jeff Jenkins.
Just so you know, this is Addie's grandpa, who's also a leader at the Well College group, okay?
All right. So this is early in the morning. I'm getting ready. There's a couple of people still asleep. I got up really early. And I go to the bathroom, and I see Jeff is sleeping. He's snoring, so I know he's sleeping. I go into the bathroom, 30 seconds later, he gets up, he goes into the bathroom, goes into a stall, goes to the bathroom. I don't think much about it. He walks back out. I'm done like a minute after that. I go back out, he's snoring again. I'm like, and I remember after that, I remember when he walked into the bathroom, he said,
So he sleep-peed.
That's my only assumption.
That's too funny. Oh. All right, guys, we're going to move on. This question's for Mr. Ray. Mr. Ray, be brutally honest with us. How was the food on our mission trip?
Well, the food was all right, I thought. I'm kind of a picky guy, and for the most part, they had something I could eat.
Okay, you need to pass your mic to Miss Elizabeth. Miss Elizabeth, you will tell the real. You will tell the real. What was the food like?
Well, for me, it wasn't that bad.
It wasn't food. Share some. What was that one meal that we were all looking at? It was like beanie weenie. Like somebody explain this meal because we were like, what is it?
Let me tell you all. Refined beans is disgusting. That crap looks like straight dog food.
Their
And
refried beans are bad.
I don't like my food to touch at all. These people are just like, blop, 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 and you're eating that crap. And I'm like, no.
There was some stuff that looked like prison food.
It was so bad. And I literally, like, carved out my food from these beans because it looked so gross. And I tried it, and it was like straight chalk. And it was so...
My favorite was something that you when you got it, you're like, oh, this looks like sausage mixed with like something. And then you're eating and you're like, it's hot dog mixed with like, it was so gross. It was just so good. Madison, go ahead.
Okay, I am not kidding when I say that we had pasta 4 times in 2 days.
Oh, yeah.
We had pasta for lunch. I think it was the first day. And then we had it for dinner. And then the church served us pasta lunch the next day. And then we had it for dinner that day, too. And I was like, I called my mom, and I was like, we're not having pasta for the rest of the month.
So the moral of the story, guys, is that when you go on mission, it is very different from any other trip because it's not about you. You're not going to have the most comfortable sleeping situation. You may not get the best food, but it's still incredibly worth going because you get to see what God does, and we're going to get to those questions in just a minute. So I wanted to share a little bit about the practicality. Emily?
So we were like, yeah, Mexico, we're going to, like, eat Mexican food, like, it's close to Mexico. We had, okay, it wasn't even funny. Like, on the last day, we had, like, a little fun day, and our whole, like, group was like, Mexican food, yum, yum, yum. We show up, and I don't even think they, like, told us where we were going. It was a seafood restaurant, y'all. I was like, what? So, like, even when we were, I think we had one meal that was very similar to, like, tacos, and I don't remember what it was, like a burrito or something?
It was a quesadilla.
We did have food at the church that was really good, but it was also like, what am I eating? And it was like a soup, and we were like, what's in the soup? We didn't want to ask because we were like, oh. So, like, there was a bunch of different things. I think Grant, oh my gosh, we were in the car and we were like, what was in that soup? And Grant was like, I don't know, someone told me it was small intestines, and we're like, man, I wouldn't eat that. And they're like, oh, that was for flavoring, y'all. You weren't supposed to eat it. And there was like pig feet or something in mine or someone else's, and then in mine was like a big piece of like bacon fat. And I was like, I asked one of the guys that was sitting next to me that was like one of the translators or part of the church. I was like, so are you like supposed to eat this? And I'm not even kidding, it was so big. And he was like, yeah. And I was like, oh, okay. So I took a tiny little bite. I was like, you expect me to eat this? So yeah, the chicken was pretty good. I think Ryan was like, yo, this chicken right here is so good. So the food was pretty good there. We had waffles like every morning. That was the best part, especially when you like didn't want to eat beanie weenies with eggs. So
that's what it was beanie weenies with eggs. All right,
Okay.
Marcia, this question's for you. We got to hurry up because of time. What was the most exciting and memorable part of the trip for you personally?
I don't know. There was a lot of exciting parts. Like, I loved being able to connect with the kids there. Like, that was the main thing. Like, I was so happy that I finally, like, actually, like, once they were, like, not rude, I, like, actually got them to be, like, nice to me and, like, actually got to, like, talk to them and stuff. But I say the most exciting part for me was, I don't know, going up to this one house with Emily and Anna were within our group, and so was Jerry. But we walked up, and they answered the door, but this little kid answers the door, and he just has a shirt and Mario underwear on. So I'm like, hey. And so then his older brother is looking at us, and, like, they get their mom and their grandma. And the mom is, like, pretty young, I'd say, and she has a baby and just the 2 boys. So then the grandma was there. She didn't speak that much English, but we had our translator. And that was actually one of the houses that I led, like, through the 3 circles and stuff, and actually, like, got them to be saved. So that was, like, kind of crazy to, like, sit there and think, like, wow, this whole family right here was just so thankful that, like, we came up to them, because the grandma, like, actually wanted to know more. She was like, how do we, like, do this or something like that? And so we started explaining, and it was, like, a great conversation. And we, like, prayed them through the prayer and stuff, and it was just, like, like an in-awe moment. Like I think the grandma and maybe the mom were crying and stuff. And then even the little boys were like, yeah, we want to do that. Even though they were just like sitting there. But the baby kept biting the mom's shoulder while we were praying. So, but that was definitely like one of the most exciting parts for me was like I did that. Like not like I did that, but like I actually like led them to that, and then God like worked through me and did that. So.
And Marcia got a chance to share her testimony at the church, and so did Mr. Jerry, and that was really exciting too. All right, I'm going to speed this along. Madison, what did you learn about yourself because of the mission trip? You can also share what God confirmed about you, dog whisperer.
Okay, so this is also like my most memorable moment. It was on the first day, and Texas and like next Mexico and Texas, you can't pet the dogs because they could bite you, or they will bite you.
They're not
or will.
domesticated. They don't have
But,
their shots. They're wild.
You would walk around, and there would be a dog in basically every yard. Like, we almost got attacked by 13, but we saw a yard full of 13 chihuahuas. And
I wish we had video of that. That was awesome.
And my team was walking by the house, and these chihuahuas came out from under the house one at a time. And then there was a gate. The house was closed off and everything. We're like, oh, it's a gate. We're all safe. They come crawling under the gate. And so there's just this road full of chihuahuas, and we're just like, just keep walking. But anyways, on the first day, there was this black dog. He popped out of nowhere, and we were on our way to our first road. Team 1 was Miss Anna's, and they would go on the other side of the road, and my team was on our side. And this dog followed us the entire time we were doing our first day. And he would protect us from all of the other dogs in the other yards and all that stuff. I named him Jet because it was the first thing that I could think of. And then the others, there was a bunch of names. There was Play-Doh and a bunch of other names for that dog. But he was a very good dog. And then he kind of ended up being the church's dog because...
They were not happy.
Yeah, they were very nice to him. And then we were walking back, and it was so cool. But we were walking back from where we were, and the dog goes to a house next to the church. So he lives next to the church. But he was with us the entire time, and on other days too. So we just kind of called him our guardian dog because it's like God kind of sent us this little guardian to protect us from all the other dogs, and I thought that was really, really cool.
Well, and the thing is, guys, they were like packs of dogs, okay? So imagine like street gangs of dogs, okay? And so like, no, for real. And our teams, because we had this guardian angel dog, like none of the other dogs messed with us. They did not come near us. So we're like, what are they talking about? We need to worry about dogs. Meanwhile, Ryan almost got bit by one.
I want to share that.
And Raya tells me they turned a street corner, and then all of a sudden like 8 dogs just all ran in a row. And like spread out and stared at them like, don't come over here. And so, we realized this really was a guardian angel dog that the Lord sent to our teams to protect us. And it was really cool because he would be right next to us, keeping us off the road or right in front of people. And it was almost like when we would leave, it was almost like he was like telling his family, whoever they were, bye, Mom and Dad, I'll be home later, going out to evangelize. Like he just went on the mission with us. So that was pretty cool. And it was interesting that it was Madison's team because Madison has the gifting with animals. And it was almost like God was saying, I see you, Madison. I know your gift, and I'm confirming that for you.
I also forgot to add something. After the first day, we kind of made an exception for this dog. We got to pet him. So he was like the dog that we would go to pet and just socialize with.
Right. So, Ryan, I wanted to ask you, tell us about the daily leadership training, because that was a big part of the trip. We got to do that every day. How would you rate that training?
While we're still on it, I do want to share a dog story. Is that okay?
Real quick.
All right. Well, to add on to her story, our group just got done with the house, and we walk out in the street. And we look down the street, and a ways away, we go, oh, look, hey, there's another group. And then a couple seconds pass by, and we just see a flood of dogs just go into the street. And we're like, oh, my goodness, they're getting attacked. And, yeah, they were fine. But, and there's and there's this other house. We went down. We had two groups per street, one on each side, and our side of the street got done first. And so we went down. We turned right, and we passed this house with like 3 or 4 German shepherds. These dogs do not play. And we passed them. They were barking at us. Nothing unusual down there. We walk back. We're okay. We got to pick up the other team now. And as we're walking down the third time, so we've now passed this house. This would be the third time. They're barking at us. We're like, oh yeah, don't worry about them, you know. And then they slip through the gate. I like stand my ground. I'm like, okay, what are they gonna do? And for some reason, of course, my brain blanks out, and I'm just standing there. I stood like this with my foot in front. And that's something you want to do with the dogs. You want to stand your ground, because showing fear, then they'll attack you. And that's what the translator told me afterwards. And the dog, I'm not kidding, he was like inches from my leg. And it was pretty funny. And I just stood there like processing it. And like 3 seconds later, I was like, oh, he's going to bite me. And
So Ryan, because we have a few minutes left, can you share just a little bit about the leadership training and how you would rate that?
So about the leadership training. So what we did is we did the leadership training in the morning, ate lunch, and then went in the afternoon and evangelized. So the leadership training was very, very educational and very awesome. It wasn't like school where they're like, oh, you got to know this, and they gave just a bunch of facts. It was very engaging. We did group work where we would where they would tell us stuff, and then, okay, discuss this with your group, and we would share. There was a lot of things to learn. I can't really express one specific thing, but I mean, it was leadership training. That's the main goal, was to further our leadership skills and get out there and spread its word, instead of just, not to shun what Emily said, but like, oh, you know, somebody else do it, you know. And that was our first day. We were all nervous. I totally get that. I did the same thing. But the main goal for it was, at the end of the week, everybody's like, all right, let's do this. I'm going to go up there. I'm going to do this.
And we learned a lot about the statistics about the need for missionaries and about different stats in different countries. So that was very interesting. Moving on really quick, because we don't have a whole lot of time. Elizabeth, in what ways did God surprise you the most on this mission trip? Someone want to share a mic with her? Or you have one? Okay.
I got one.
Okay. What ways did God surprise you the most on the mission trip?
You know, it was interesting. Because I went on a mission trip with East West before, I felt like I knew what to expect. And I went into this mission trip very excited. I was so excited to travel, go to a new place, be in an airplane, get to, you know, spend a week with my church family, and just kind of do what we did when we went to Guatemala. And it was crazy, because one thing that God kind of showed me was how dependent I really am on him. Because I kind of realized, oh, I'm going into this with kind of like an inflated ego, even though it was unintentional. It was like, oh yeah, I've done this before, I can do this again. And then you go into it and it's like, whoa, this is a lot. And it was overwhelming. And so it was just a reminder of like, we really can't do this life without God. Because there was a lot of different things on this trip that was testing me personally. And there was definitely a lot of spiritual warfare, like all around. I think we all felt it to some degree. And so one thing that God kind of surprised me with was how much I wasn't really depending on him as much as I should have in the beginning. And he also kind of showed me what areas of my spiritual life that I still have some growth that needs to be done in. But I like that too because it's also kind of I'm the kind of person where I like a challenge, and so it kind of felt challenging in a way where it's like, okay, I still have some growth in this area to do. Let's do it. It's like how much, I feel like I've, you know, grown so much in the years that I've been a Christian. It's like it's cool. There's more to grow, and I can become a more polished version of myself, like with God's help. And it's like, okay, cool. There's the best is yet to come. So I thought that was really cool.
Excellent. Joe, how did God grow you the most on this mission trip?
He grew me the most by just teaching me just to have the patience to deal with like situations, whether it's the delay in the airport we went through and sitting there and moving gates, I think 4 or 5 times in like 2 hours. Just growing my patience and just growing my comfortability, just trusting God to have the words to say with the conversations, because in Guatemala, the conversations I felt were a little bit easier with the people we interacted with, because we're Americans from a different country, and it's not like every day there's someone knocking on their door just to talk about why we're there and talk about Jesus.
Excellent. And our last question of the night before we move on to part 2. Mr. Ray, can you share your opinion on our mission partners, Chago and Wes from East West Ministries?
Well, they're both very dedicated to spreading the gospel. It's kind of hard to really say and express without actually getting to meet them and hang out with them for a little while. But they're full of life. They're full of God. They're full of desire to reach people for God, and they're very excited about what they do, and they're very excited to be able to reach new people, new youth people, to be able to train them to move forward and to grow in life. A lot about what Elizabeth was just talking about is there's always room for more. That's what excites them. Their passion is to train others to be able to lead, spread the word, and reach people for God.
Amen. So guys, I would love it if you would give our panel a round of applause for sharing tonight. And the biggest round of applause goes to God, because 29 people got saved and 89 people got to hear the gospel. So that was really, really exciting. Panelists, you may have a seat. Thank you so much. Now, there's 2 things we're going to do. First, I'm going to share with you guys our highlights, and then I'm going to share with you where our mission trip will be in 2024. So, highlights. Number 1, we start a new series next week, and it's called Underdog. If you don't know what an underdog is, you will find out. And no, he's not the little cartoon guy from way back in the day with the cape, and if you don't know that, you're just really young. But Miss Sarah is going to kick off the series, so please be praying for her. Her message is called Why God Loves Underdogs, and you're going to learn a lot about it. So, it's a 4-part series. Be praying for that. Bring friends. Come with your Bibles. Be ready for life group. And after that, we're going to finish the month with a testimony. So we got Mr. Paul coming to lead us in worship. We're going to have Pastor Rodney share his story. If you've never heard it, it's wild. So he's going to be here sharing that. But we were going to do some questions. I'm maybe going to limit it to like 3 or 4 students. So if any of you have a specific question about the trip, I'm just going to field that, because right now we're pressed for time. I was going to have the team up here. But did anybody, because I was on the trip, does anybody have any questions about the mission trip that you want to ask? Okay, so Addison, if we can get a microphone down to her, go ahead and speak into the mic. You can stand up, Addison. It's just so we can hear it on YouTube. No, it's fine. You don't have to stand if you don't want to, but we won't be able to hear you on the recording. Okay, is Mr. Ray asking on your behalf? Okay.
So she was wanting to know financially what you have to raise for the trip.
Excellent question. So each trip is a little bit different, but it covers everything from your airfare to your ground transportation to your lodging to your meals, all the supplies that you're given for leadership training. And also just a little donation to the church. This trip was $1,700, which is basically what the Guatemala trip was. A lot of the funds from that trip were already being used during the pandemic to feed people in Guatemala because they had massive food shortages. We had toilet paper shortages. They had actual food shortages, which is why a trip to South Texas was so expensive for us. We basically had used a lot of the funds for Guatemala to help the people, and the rest of it is what we used for the second part of the postponed trip. But around 1,700, I'm mindful of that when I pray about the opportunities and plan them. I look at cost and put that into consideration. We're going to have a longer time to fundraise this time. The trip we're going on is just a little more expensive. I don't have the exact dollar amount right now, but some mission trips, depending on where you're going, like Japan, could be $4,000. So it just really depends on the trip. But that was a very good question, Addison. Anyone else have a question? All right, Tyson, can we get him the mic? Oh, I'm sorry, Elijah and then Tyson. Okay.
Oh, here we go.
Elijah, if you want to stand up and ask the question.
How old do you have to be?
Ooh, very good question. So we partner with East West Ministries. They're a organization that's been doing mission trips specifically with high school students and college students for like 20 years. They typically do not allow middle schoolers. But when this trip first was advertised in 2019, Marcia, Kylie, Ryan, were you in middle school? What grade were you? I think you were in 8th grade. They were all in middle school, and they felt God calling them. Like, they were so clear. They were like, Miss Anna, like, I'm burning to go on this trip. The Lord spoke to me. This happened. And I knew for them, they were at a spiritual maturity level. It didn't matter how old they were. They knew the Lord. It was obvious in the fruit of their life. So I went to our mission partners and I asked them, we have very spiritually mature students. They just happen to be a little younger. Can they go? And they said, we've never done that. We're going to have a meeting. We will talk about it internally. We will get back to you. So they came up for us. I don't know if they do this for anyone else. They said, if you have a spiritually mature middle school student, they can go with their parent. A parent has to come. And that's why we had a few parents. We weren't going to tell Mrs. Manor and Christina, Marcia's mom, Mrs. Pletcher, sorry, you can't go because now they're in high school by the time we had the trip. We were like, you guys definitely need to go because it was their first mission trip. Mr. Jerry as well. So if you're in middle school and you're interested, you can go. You just need to talk to me first, and I have to have a conversation with your parent, and then one of your parents has to come with you. This trip's going to be in 2024, so if you're in 6th grade now, you'll probably be going into 8th grade, so it'll be good. You'll be older. High school students, you do not need a parent. 9th to 12th grade, you just get to come. And we have some of the college students that get to come too, whether they're student leaders or not, because it's open to the well. So I'll take maybe one or two more questions. Does anyone have any? Okay, Tyson, stand on up. It may have been muted. Let's try it. Oh, switch it out. There we go.
Hello?
Yeah.
All right. Were you ever, rejected, when you asked to, if they want to know Jesus?
That's a great question. So, yeah, there were some people, most of the people, I'll tell you what, this culture, the Latino culture, South American culture, they're very, Central American culture, very hospitable. Meaning they will not be rude. They will not turn you away. They will always open and answer the door if they're home. Because let's face it, we don't do that. I'm sure someone's knocked at your door and you're like, oh, I'm not answering that. I don't know. They will greet you. Now, but will they always say, yes, I'll accept Christ? No, sometimes they were like, I'm not ready for that. I don't really think I'm comfortable doing that today. Sometimes they would say, we already know Jesus, and you could tell by talking to them how much they had a personal relationship, or maybe it was more religion. But nobody ever just rudely turned us away. Now, I'll tell you, I've done mission trips in other places where it was not that culture, and sometimes they were pretty rude. There were angry people that were like, I don't know that God is not real, and they'd slam the door. You know what I would do in that situation? I'd walk down the driveway, and I'd pray over their home. They couldn't I was on a public sidewalk. What were they going to do? But I would just pray over their home, that they'd have an encounter with the Lord. I didn't take it personal because you know what? The Bible says we will get persecuted. There will be people that don't like you because you know Jesus, because they're angry. for whatever reason. But you got to just wipe the dust off your shoes and keep going. That's what the Bible says. So that was a great question. All right, one more. Anyone have? Okay, let's get Julia and have her ask.
How many people did you save?
So the final number was 29 people the Lord saved through us sharing the gospel. And there were 89 people that got to hear the gospel. So that was exciting. All right, guys, if you have other questions, you can see me or anyone on the panel. We have some time left. Here's what we're going to do. If you saw Ryan's shirt, you see my shirt, this is the 3-circle gospel method. This is what we learned and were trained in sharing the gospel. And then we actually had a time while we were at that church plant to break into small groups and teach people how to do this. It involves drawing this basic diagram with stick figures. So we're going to take the rest of the time before parents come. We got 20 minutes. You're going to break into your life groups. Your life group leaders are going to have a sheet of paper they're going to rip off of that pad. They're going to grab a Sharpie marker on the table, and they're going to basically train you in how we do this. So I'm going to ask middle school boys, you're going to be on the floor in this area. High school boys, you're going to be on the floor in this area. Middle school girls, y'all are going to be up here on the stage. High school girls, if you're in 9th and 10th grade, you're on that back corner. If you're in 11th and 12th grade, you're going to be over there. Miss Madison and I will help senior girls and senior upperclassmen girls. And Miss Sarah and Miss Elizabeth, Kylie, and Marcia are going to teach other high school girls. Okay. Oh, yes. And really quick before I forget, the most exciting part. Watch the screen. Sit down, girls, middle school girls. Watch the screen because this is where we're going to go on mission in 2024.